content that you want to share with someone. But as a teacher, you also say to yourself, where do you find your ideas? Where do you find your inspiration? That's, as a teacher, it's no different than business owner, no different than artist, designer, handyman, whatever it is. It's we look at the idea of where you find your motivation and where do you recharge. And so often, as John was mentioning, we're constantly go, go, go that we forget to stop once in a while and take a breath. Just in the last few years, I'll just throw out one thing is I added yoga to my life, and it may not work for everybody, but to go and to learn to breathe a little bit, to stop the go constantly and just take a breath. And John knows I like to talk, and I like to talk fast, and once in a while just taking a breath. And we sit here and we talk about where do you find your recharge. Something on my personal life I mentioned is something about yourself. Maybe it's yoga. Maybe it's something physical, but there's also my brain, and my brain is always looking for new ideas. And one of the things to share here, John, I'm into TED and TED Talks. I just was watching Al Gore do one from February 22nd this year about, it wasn't just about global warming. It was about where we're losing in global warming, but also where we're winning. I'll throw out a number I just learned this morning. We're 56 times ahead of where they thought we'd be 10 years ago with solar. We're something like 14 times ahead where they thought we'd be with wind power. Now I sit there and go, well, what's this mean to me and my business and my personal life? It just means that here's one guy who's passionate about the environment, who's trying to make a difference, and he put this video while he stood in front of a stage, and he put this content out there. Well, I tuned into it this morning while I was driving, audio only, not the video, but while I was driving, and I got to listen to this. And it was just a nice motivational way to think about it. So maybe it's a video, maybe it's yoga. I'm just putting these two things out there. And on the video side, I'll put one more. There's the business side of me, but there's also the maker side in me. And I chose my area here. I've got a little visual in the background. I got a tail end of a saw there in the back. I love to make things, and in the last few years, I've learned to step more away from my day-to-day job and to do something with my hands. And in doing so, I realized that you got to be inspired to do that. And some of the inspiration comes from the world around you. And I watch a lot of videos. Two is this guy, Jimmy DiResta, and another guy, Frank Howarth. They're just two guys who like to make things, and they made these series of videos, kind of like what we're doing here. Well, I'm constantly looking to learn, and I was telling John earlier, I'm doing with the kinds of things I've learned on the web for motivation. I've decided to build my own house. So I'm going to pan around here and turn, and if you look in the back there's my little project over the last year or so. I've been busy. So taking time off from my job on weekends, I took almost a month off last year, and I recharged by just taking some time to make something. So again, I'm talking about using things with wood and doing something like that. It could mean different things to different people, but making something, learning to breathe, watching something, these are some ways that I've learned to recharge my batteries. And I'm curious, Jason, how about yourself? What do you do to recharge your batteries?
Really, what I do is I go home and stare at my 4 children. No, I'm just kidding. That's great stuff, Peter. I appreciate you sharing it. And the one thing in the business world, we're faced with a couple different kinds of thinking. You have the complex critical thinking where you're locked in a room with a time bomb and you have to defuse it, and you have to come up with a way to defuse the bomb. And that's one way of thinking. It's got to be done right now. And too often, I think in the workplace, that's the type of thinking we're always wrapped up in. The pressure of, I got to get this done right now. And of course, that's fine and good, but you don't come up with a lot of new ideas that way. There's not a lot of creative thinking that way. It's how do we put out the fire? And you hit it right on the head. The creative thinking comes a lot of times when you're not at work or around work, when you're letting your mind go to something else. When you talked about yoga, I got into yoga a few years ago, and totally skeptical of it, but what an amazing thing to do. Everybody should try it at least once. And speaking of yoga, John, I'm so happy that when you said the naked truth, I thought I was going to have to get undressed and be submitted to questioning.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that didn't happen. here, but too often, right? Let's do it. Ask me anything. But too often, and I know in my job, it's about how do we put out the next fire, and for me anyway, and I think for a lot of, there's just no way to come up with new creative ways of doing business that way, and even figuring out problems. But mostly, it's the new ideas that come out of getting out of the office. There's some small things that we do. I used to be in this office all the time. I would eat in here. I got a nice office and it's comfortable, but a few years back, I realized that I was basically brain dead from being here all the time. I mean, that's just the best way to put it. We were in the process of trying to build this company to sell. We were going through some issues and finding ways to make it attractive to outside buyers, and I was brain dead. One of the little things I did was I started taking lunch outside the office. Sounds small, sounds like a nothing thing. Made a huge difference in my ability to think creatively in the workplace. It really did. I remember when Michael Eisner was the head of Disney. He had some health problems, had a heart attack, and I remember reading an interview where he was talking about how he used to work 13, 14 hours a day because that's just what you did. I mean, and I think a lot of us were brought up to, you got to work harder, you got to work harder. And I've heard John talk about it many times. What you have to do is work smarter. But what Eisner had to do is his doctor says you cannot work more than 5 hours a day, or else you're going to die. And he took that seriously. And in this interview, he was talking about how much more productive he is with 5 hours a day than with 14 hours a day, and how much better he feels. He gets to spend more time with his family. He gets to spend more time on his passion projects. He's probably not building a house like you are, Peter, but he may be overseeing it. But and that stuck with me. That was a long time ago, but that stuck with me. It's really about the growth comes from change. I think we all agree on that. Growth comes from change. So and like me with a family, our business not just requires, but it lends itself to being involved in the community. So you're talking about volunteer work, being on boards, things like that, and they can all run together. So at the end of the day, 10, 11 o'clock at night, you're going, what happened? Where did my day go? But to change it up, to get outside your box, to work on that's amazing what you're doing with that house. The federal law won't allow me to touch tools, but but if I could, I probably still wouldn't do that. But it's a great idea. If you're doing the same thing over and over again, and you're getting the same results, then you are exhibiting insanity, as we know the definition. That's what it is. You're doing the same thing, and we get caught up in it. So any type of change, getting out, working different hours, working in a different spot, working from home once in a while, going to work, and I've read and learned about all these things, and they're all very effective. How about you, Cassidy? Go on.
One of the things you said, Jason, was you talked about the 4 hour or somebody working for 5 hours as a way to change. I've got Timothy Ferriss's book up here, The 4 Hour Body, which I thought is interesting. The camera here flips it around, but he did the 4 hour work week, and it was a really good read of mine. I really enjoyed that. But that's 4 hour body, 4 hour work week. The idea of, can we change the way we look at the time that we have? And I think that's huge. As we start to look at the investment that we have in time. And I just was talking about him, but there's different ways. I've got one new title I just got right here. It's the life-changing magic of tidying up, and it's on the bestseller list. It's Marie Kondo wrote this book on kind of tidying up your life, where we could free up some time to allow us to spend, say, more time with family or more time with ourselves, just to recharge. And John knows when it comes to reading things, I'm a big fan of. I'm an entrepreneur at heart and love my Inc. magazine. Whether you're into Entrepreneur magazine or Inc., it's looking at new ways that people kind of are looking at life differently. Just like you said, Jason, is kind of stepping back and looking at it from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. And whether your doc's telling you that's really bad, but maybe it's people at your job, maybe it's your family. But looking at it from different perspectives. And I like to read. So, I got my Consumer Reports. I've got trade magazines as well. This is one for the printing industry. I mean, just reading and I say all that. It's not all about work all the time too. A great little book read was The Martian. I could be here all day about reading, but I will admit, like getting outside too. And I think John and I met. I was doing something called Getting Out, was a talk. And it was about get out of your comfort zone, get out of your everyday of your job. And it might just mean get outside. Go spend time in the industry that you want to work with. Go spend time with the people you want to be more connected to. And one last one, Jason, you mentioned volunteering, and I think giving back, it means a lot. We get so much from that. I'm the maintenance guy at our local water conservancy where we're educating people on where their tap water comes from. And my job is to keep this old barn where all the meetings are and this great space, keeping the thing up and running. I love it because it's my chance to give back, and I'm connected to this community of hundreds of people. So love what you were sharing, Jason, and thanks for bringing in the family aspect. I'm the youngest of 4. I've got 6 nieces and nephews and 2 aging parents that I care for, and I wish I had more time to spend with all of them. And I shouldn't say wish. I am when I schedule it, and that's
you guys. You know, we're as a society. I think in America, we really are overworked, and not just entrepreneurs. I mean, even employees from top level down to entry level employees will work. What's some of the ways that you work with your staff, Jason, in the past, and also Peter, that you've told people like Xerox and people on the stage? You're talking to TED Talk. I mean, there's thousands of people viewing your TED Talks. What would be that thing that here I am, a new business owner, and I want to go ahead and make sure that I don't get overworked. It shows in Europe that they have a higher GP, gross product distribution because of people that take the time for their families or take the time to decompress and recharge. They're more productive. So what do you guys say to that, Jason, to your employees? That you had many employees, I think over 100 at one time. What did you guys do for that?
Well, I tell you what, the simplest thing is, has been for us, and I learned this from my father, is to have fun. Work can be fun. And it should be fun. I mean, we work almost more than we do anything else, for better or worse. 5 days a week, we come in the morning, we go home and we spend more time at work than we do just about anywhere else. And it's got to be fun. And even when you're doing the hard stuff, in our business, we're in the railroad business. And, when you're out there with guys that are hammering spikes and we're in 2016, but the best way to work on a railroad is with your hands, and it still is. And it's hard work. And a lot of these guys live for it. They love it. But I go out there with them, and they're having a good time. They're talking, they're laughing, they're joking. I mean, it may be 110 degrees, and anybody would rather be anywhere else but there. But when you build teams like that, and they all buy into that, hey, we're all in this together. We're going to get this done together, and it becomes fun. It's just the opposite of that. You can see very clearly when there's 1 or 2 people in those teams that aren't buying into that, and it's glaringly obvious. And they start to kind of pull the whole thing apart. I mean, work has to be done in the office, out of the office, on a job site. It's got to be done, and there's no reason not to enjoy it. I mean, at certain times, would we rather be somewhere else? Of course, it happens. I love my job, and that happens a lot. But if I can't smile and laugh and get through it and build some relationships, then I really don't want to be here.
Right. Well, how about this? Is that both of you guys are super successful. You have a lot of people always look at you and mentor you and ask you for mentor, ask you for advice. Is what when someone says to you, Peter says, "Man, dude, I just don't know how to slow down." Right? Have we heard that before? I don't know how to slow down. What do you say to that dude? Or that lady?
One of the things, John, you had suggested to me was to take a look at your other versions of The Naked Truth, and one of the ones that John Foley had mentioned was the idea of kind of when you're the one giving the advice, don't forget to tell them, I'm trying to deal with it too. So the first thing that I usually tell people is I'm dealing with this stuff too. Not enough time is probably one of the biggest ones. And one of the things you can do, it's something they teach you in finance. It's something they teach you in eating more healthy, is track it. So what do you do in a week? What do you do in a day? Just looking at the amount of time that you spend somewhere. Well, I don't have time to track my time. I mean, that's one of the most common things that people say. I don't have time to track my time. But when you go and you look at people who have gotten out of personal debt, who have figured out ways in their business to refinance and to grow it, or you just look at somebody who's committed to living a healthier life, it's taking the time and look at how do you currently spend what it is that you're doing. And if you don't have enough time, I mean, John, that brings me to an old workflow conversation. In the printing and graphic communications, we talked about workflow as people, process, and technology. Well, for Jason, it's no different, except in your industry, it's just a different people, a different process, and a different technology. If you want a more efficient workflow, how's it currently working for you? So Jason mentioned, a guy putting spikes in the railroad. Well, first you got to identify, which ties are bad, and then you got to decide, okay, on what days of the week are we going to replace them when trains aren't going by? So it's kind of like putting the plan together, but starting at something as simple as just observe. You don't have to have a plan just yet. Just observe. Where are you spending your time? And for me, a lot of my time was for where I found some big changes in my life was it was spent in traveling. And I love to travel, but I also I do. I know you do, John. I know you like it a whole lot. But I was Jason. No, not so much. Or you like to travel too?
No, I do. I just tell this guy to calm down.
No. Well, I was looking at the kind of travel that I was doing, and could I better spend my travel days? And it was one way to find some time. So I was learning to lock together different events together, different tying family into my travel. But that's what I realized when I took some time to assess my time. But that's what I would suggest to anybody. If you're looking to have more time, you'll have the complaint of, I don't have time to do it. Look at how you're currently spending it, and then decide what's most important to you in the time that you are spending. So for me, as I mentioned, maybe some more efficiency in travel. You mentioned Europeans, John, about how they've learned ways to have a healthier life. I took a term from the Europeans. It's called a holiday. And they've got something called a proper holiday is something they call it. And I called a blog back in 2007. I did this blogging of going from Philadelphia to Anchorage by motorcycle. It took me 30 days, about 15 days out and 15 days back. But most importantly, it took me 2 years to plan that time off. So to commit to that, I wanted to make sure things were in place to be able to make that happen. But in here in the U.S., we talk about a vacation. We took Friday off and we took Monday off. And the funny part is, I mean, we call that a vacation. All right, if we're real lucky, maybe a week. Europeans, mostly, it's not necessarily the UK. It's the Spaniards, it's the Germans, it's the French. They've learned to take this proper holiday. 2 weeks is short. The average is 3, and a few take 4 weeks off in a row. Now, again, I don't know how much work they get done in a given year, but they have to figure out those pieces. Hey, I'm going to be off the month of May. Could you imagine if we said, I'm going to be off the month? I mean, Jason's like, I got a lot of ties to replace. I got a lot to do. But nothing can't be done if you don't, number one, say you can do it and then plan it and schedule it. But start first with assessing, what is it you're spending your time on. So,
right, man. I know that's good stuff. Is what I've found though? We talk a lot of business on The Naked Truth. How about family stuff? I know especially Jason, 4 daughters. Good gosh, and they range from K1 to K4. That's a inside joke because they all have the first letter of each daughter's name starts with K. And that
was a great idea.
I dubbed that. Well, I dubbed the K1 through K4, so I love that. But what about that? There's downtime. I've only got 2 daughters. What I have found in the last few years, and it takes everybody, even when you're slow like me, to understand that you got to take time. Being with both kids is great. It is. But when you do that one-on-one time with each daughter, and Jason, you in the last few years just watching you make it a point to do that. What about that, recharging those batteries?
Yeah, it may sound cliche, but I don't get anything more out of life than being with my wife and kids. I really don't. I mean, and with four girls and a busy job and everything else that's involved, it can be tough. And the girls are as busy as I am. They're probably busier, to be honest with you. Now, life takes care of some things for you. I got one that just got married, so she's off on her own. And I got one that's at college, so she's away sometime. And so I can focus on the 15 and 10-year-old a little bit more. But finding time separately for them is probably more challenging than any business thing I've ever done. So almost more than in my business, I have to dedicate myself to finding those times to do stuff. It means turning things down. It means turning down things for work. It means turning down fun things with friends. You know what I mean? To do that. And of course, it's I say that in the most positive way. I mean, there's nothing better than getting together with them. But then the girl at college, Kirsten, you have to find time to go see her, or else after a while, one, she'll probably end up in jail, and two, they miss you. I mean, especially when they get a little older, as a father, I think, okay, well, they're all right now. They're 20 and 23. They're okay. They're doing their thing. But of course, that's not the case. I mean, they still need their parents. But of course, it's a welcome challenge. As I've said, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done is to have kids. A lot of them. And, the only mistake I might have made is naming them all with K's, because I haven't gotten one of their names right in 20 years. That's why John's saying we call them K1, K2, K3, K4. It's just easier. So I have to dedicate time. I have to do it. Because if I just try to make it work, I won't.
So John,
go ahead, Peter.
Is this how it works?
Yeah.
I mean, do you raise your hand? I don't know. I was trying to be polite too. I'm learning how this works.
Well, blab etiquette.
Yeah, blab etiquette. It's like raise both hands. Something that Jason just said that is very hard for me. And Jason, you said learning to say no. And I would say that if there's something from, what's one of the ways you can think about to recharge your batteries when you're looking at how you spend your time is the power of saying no. And one of the greatest consultants I ever met, this guy by the name of Frank Romano, who's in the graphic communications industry. He was a fan of you don't have to say no, but you can say not right now and give some suggestions at a later time. But that power of saying no, to people who, and usually it's the entrepreneurial mindset, it's the outgoing people, it's the ones we want to say yes. Not only does it feel good, but also we want to help others at so many times, and sometimes at a cost. And the cost sometimes is us. So I tip my hat to you on that one and say that it's a hard one that I face often, but at least I'm aware of. If you can at least be aware of it, that's the first step. Second is to try it once in a while. And I'll use the volunteering job, and I will admit I kind of just saw an email roll in. Hey, we got the can lights in. You can come in and finish the paint job at that where I'm volunteering. And I'm like, okay, when can I fit that in? The power of saying not right now is important when you start to assess what's important to you. So well done, learning to. It's not say no to everything. Obviously, we wouldn't be here else. John wouldn't have sucked us into this thing, Jason. But
exactly.
But saying yes.
This is another thing I should have said no to.
You've broadened your horizons by learning some new channels of communication. Dan Reeve, one of our viewers said, you have to own your calendar. You definitely do, or else it'll own you. Turn down things. And I was scurrying trying to find the song "Turn Down for What." But yeah, so own your calendar. So, but when you say turn down things, Jason, that's actually like sacrifice, right? So another word would be sacrifice, not to put words in your mouth. So sometimes what I've found is the bigger the sacrifice, sometimes the bigger the reward also, right? And sacrificing is a tough thing because as the kids grow up and you've got to do different things, it gets harder because you want those kids and you want your family and you want your business and this goes across both channels, business and personal, is that you want the best. But the one crazy thing that I'd love to address is that sometimes as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as managers, we have our life, like all of a sudden something happens to us, right? Like we've got to make ourselves better, because a lot of times we put the front on because we're the leader. We're the leader of our team. We're the leader of the family. We're the leader of our peer group. And we've got to always act like everything's great. Everything's great. And then that time when you explode at home because that's the only ones that you got to listen to. And I think when that decompress time is important, that Peter brought such a great topic up that seemed not like that exciting, but it all starts with the recharge, you know. And I'm vocal about some demons that I have. You know, I've been 8 years without drinking alcohol, and it's been an important part to just think clearly, you know, and be able to discuss that with people. But more importantly, I've been able to, you know, you talk about recharge, man, you take that kind of stuff out of your life and you can really focus on recharging. And I had so many years of it. And as you guys know, both of you guys and a lot of the people watching, is that I've taken time to try to catch up, because I thought as much as an alcoholic I was a workaholic, and I needed to go ahead and catch up with some times that I missed. And that's why I've been traveling so much, trying to make memories with the kids that I felt I was supposed to be doing the right thing and I didn't. So all of us have those addictions, and I think all of us also are workaholics, you know. So how did that balance again? That's what we're talking about, balancing things. Any you guys want to take that and expand on it?
Jason?
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, I can relate, John. I've been without alcohol for about 3 years. And you're right. I mean, you talk about taking something like that out of your life and what it does to your ability to think clearly. It's pretty amazing. Now with what John does with the travel and stuff like that, there's probably a little more of a challenge there, because, you know, it looks like anyway on Facebook, you're always going to exotic places, and you know, I know there's a lot of fun partying going there. But if you know John at all, which is to say, if you've met him for 30 seconds, you know that he can have a good time in a mortuary. So, you know, it's not really a problem for him. But you know, it's all about the elusive balance. And do we ever have it? Man, some days are better than others. I can only speak from my own experience and say, you know, I go through maybe days or weeks, or maybe even I put a month together. I'm like, you know what? Everything feels good. You know, work is good, home is good, things are going good, the sun's out, the weather's nice. But inevitably, you know, it's a lifelong search for the balance, and really, and that's okay. That's okay, because it's what life's all about. You know, if you ask me. I mean, you know, if we had everything figured out all the time, we'd have a pretty boring life.
Absolutely.
You know, and so, you know, it's all about finding balance, losing it, getting it back, finding it, losing it, and then things change. I mean, John, you know, John's got a child getting ready to go to college. I got two that are almost grown up, and the other two are right behind him. I mean, it happens quick. And when, I mean, you know, I've lived my adult life with a house full of people. Well, that's changing and will change in that perspective. So I could very easily throw myself more into work, but I'm sure my wife wouldn't appreciate that. You know, so I will have a new chapter of challenge to find that balance, and, you know, but it's what makes us want to live. I mean, you know, to me, it's what life's all about. I hear Peter talking and showing us, I'm so excited for him. I want to see that project finished. I mean, I'm thrilled. I am. I just love it. I think it's great. Peter, take it over.
You know, you guys talked about some personal growth and what you decided to say no to, and something for me, and John, this is probably not a surprise, is you'll know, if you've known me for quite a few years, I used to have a bigger social media presence, but one of the things that I chose to do is, one of my demons was the amount of time that I was spending on social media. In 2010, I wrote a book on social media. That's and right. I proceeded to practically fall off the social media kind of front. I'm happy to lurk, and that's what I've been doing for the last few years. A couple YouTube videos, a couple blogs that I follow, but Facebook, I have said no to Facebook, and I have to admit that was someplace that I found time, was saying no to it. Now, that being said, I have a training and education and coaching company. In some ways it may hurt, but for me, the amount of time that it's back to it, it's worked for me. So saying no to certain things in our lives and seeing where it takes us and what that could mean to you. That was something that I was doing that so much to the point where I was missing out on going out with friends. I had to do a post. I had to do this. I had to do that. It comes back to what's most important to you and the channels in which you want to deliver it. My favorite channel is face-to-face. And I got to say, one thing about this technology is I at least feel like I'm not down in South Carolina, Jason, but I was just down to see my aunt and uncle in Hilton Head, and I'm like, I thought I was going to drive up and see John for an hour and a half, but no, it's 4 hours to the north. I like face-to-face. It's my favorite channel, but this is kind of cool too. I feel like that we're close, but this beats a blog post any day of the week. I like video. It's a chance to see someone, even in their kind of unkept and whatever crazy ways of our lives. But there's something to be said about that face-to-face action. So making more time for that in my life has been a good thing.
Well, we're seeing, listening to you guys and talking just a little bit about some of the way that we recharge, finding what's right. And I think each one of us, there's no one thing recharges everybody. Like, it's not like a plug in a socket, for sure. So when you're recharging, especially Jason, I know your mind's like similar to mine. And both you guys, we always are thinking. Even when we're with the families, we're thinking, what do you take time? Or I feel that if I change my surroundings, I can and focus on, maybe it's a project that I'm trying to get creative of a new way to market a customer's product, So I'm creating a new way to market someone's product using print and direct mail. That sometimes if I get out of my atmosphere here, I could do that. And I think that's a form of recharging for sure. I mean, do you guys do anything like that? Do you communicate with other people in your market space to bounce off some ideas?
I play the get out game all the time, and I don't mean get out of your job, but just spend some time outside. And that could be bringing people into your business to find out what's going on in their mind, whether they're customers or prospects. But the getting out mentality, I'm a big fan and supporter of it. Just to change your environment. You said it, John. Is we change your environment, it can change your perspective on a lot of things that are affecting us. So yeah, I support it. In fact, two things that come to mind. One is I spend time trying to represent for my industry and other industries too through seminars and talks and education. I think that's something you could do. It's not just to attend something, but what if you did a seminar? Jason, I'm not sure about the business other than you play with trains all day long, but I'm thinking of something like logistics. If you're trying to move something, or what's it like to take care of an entire railroad line, something like that, where you can share with other people, where you're I'd say the word teacher, but you're the one sharing, and then you get to sit down, and that's something I love. Is I love to be the student too. So that's one way. And the other one that came to mind about getting out was, you know what? I was so into that one, I kind of forgot the second. So let's just go with that. I'll let Jason roll, and maybe it'll come back to me. But
like, Jason, you're the conductor, right?
Yeah, I'm the kid. Woo, woo. Yeah, I get that a lot. I mean, I'm in an interesting industry. You don't hear, a lot. People say, "What do you do?" And I say, "Well, my family owns railroads." And people are like, that's impossible. One guy said one time, "No, nobody can own a railroad. That's like owning clouds." And I said, "That's sort of like that, except there's more profit in clouds." But it's peer groups are great. I mean, really, and I'll tell you where a lot of that comes from, and I've experienced this myself. There's a fear. I think there's somewhat of a natural fear people have of asking for help or asking for, especially when I remember when I moved down here, I was pretty young. I was 22 years old, and going to our railroad meetings and our railroad peer groups and having, it took me, for whatever reason, some guts to ask some of these other owners, these other guys, like, how do you do this? Or how's this working out for you? I guess for me, I wanted the impression to be that I knew what I was doing, that I knew everything, and of course, nobody cares about that. I mean, really, not in that type. I mean, there's people that want to help you. And it's just like, I want to help people. And Peter, you said it right. I want to help people by teaching them what I do. And maybe they can use parts of that in their own business that have nothing to do with the railroad industry. And I learned so much from other businesses. I've known John and Scott forever, and I've watched them develop from a very small business to one of the premier printing companies around here, and I've watched them learn from me and from other businesses outside of the printing business is really how they've done it. But then also taking that back to your peer groups and talking to your peer groups about it, because they're the ones that have been through it. I mean, I can't tell John the trials and tribulations of a printing company. Only another printing company can. But so I think it's very important, and getting over that idea of I don't want anybody to know that I don't know what I'm talking about. The secret, folks, is that none of us have any idea what we're talking about. Right, John?
Oh, absolutely, dude. That's exactly right. Because Jason knows me really well, that he knows that I don't know anything at all other than I know fear's a liar. So one of the things that you said, fear, I think I may start going down a rabbit trail here, but I think it's pertinent. We're fearful when we talk about recharging our batteries. We're fearful that if we leave or if we stop doing what we're doing, that 100% of the momentum stops, right? And nobody else can do what we're doing. Well, guess what? I mean, this is what I found out through just life. Like life happens to all of us, and we lose people along the way. Is that life keeps going, right? So with or without us, the business will still happen. People still grow. People still age. So the fear of for me, and I'm speaking to me, not to everybody else, but I think it's very common probably throughout, is that I was working so hard, fearful that nothing else would get done. Like nobody else could go do the sales like I can do them, right? But what we find out through growth, through personal development, is that you actually are more efficient when we take that time to decompress and think, and our creative mind starts rolling a lot faster. Like the RPMs gets up quicker, right? Because you're redlining 100% of the time. And then you're able to go down, refuel, put some new octane in. Now, I don't know why I'm on the Gone in 60 Seconds split here.
I don't know, Earnhardt, but keep going.
Well, we changed the tires. Then we're able to get back up and go. So I think we were fearful, but part of that fear, and I love bringing this into it, is the ego. Right? I'm the superstar. Here's the spotlight right on me, right? And nobody could do it like John can do it. And I think sometimes that we take that break and we step back and we let other people empower other people. Probably a good word is that that helps recharge too. That makes us feel good. That makes us take a little pressure off. And listening to something else that you said, I'm writing notes over here, Jason, that I thought was really pertinent, that you don't know the trials and tribulations of a printing company, but guess what? An outside perspective sometimes is probably some of the best, because you're seeing it from not where we see it. We're seeing it on the inside of the box. You see it on the outside of the box. And when Peter taught me a long time ago, the first time I met the guy, taught me to think outside of the box, like how to pick up some new customers. Man, that was that Inc. 5000, the Inc. magazine you picked up. That was probably one of the biggest takeaways I ever took from one of your seminars, was reaching out to people inside our marketplace that was in that magazine. Right? Yep. Because how many people don't? But let's just talk about that, about the fear, the ego, and thinking outside the box. And then we'll come wrap it up, because we've been on for a little bit.
I thought of my other one, which was that getting out of the comfort zone, was to check out other industries. As you said, Jason, you know your business, and you know your business really well. You also know what's going on in your industry. Funny enough, pick another industry. Let's say automotive. They're going through their own versions of trials and tribulations, but what's going on in their industry that you could learn from and maybe pass on? I mean, automotive, getting from A to B, what's that have to do with rail? I mean, the idea of exploring other industries. And, John, you just said it, and I was sitting here looking at number 480 from last year's 5,000 fastest growing companies is this company In for the Long Haul, and it's called Daseki. I think it's a German company, but they had a 3-year growth of 966%. And what they're doing is they're moving 160-foot wind turbine blades And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, Jason, you got a way to get 160 feet somewhere? I don't know. I mean, it's like they talk about 650,000 pounds is a cumbersome freight weight. So I'm sitting there. How do you learn about what's going on in your life, whether it's business or personal, is go spend time in other industries and with other people. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest ones. It's a challenge to find the time to do that. But funny enough, the best CEOs from small to large companies would say the time they spend with other CEOs, both in the industry, their industry, and in others, that's the most they get. And it's not CEs, it's CMs, CIs, CFs, all of the chief officers of all different size companies. Spend time with people going through what you're going through. You'd be surprised at what can resonate and also what a different perspective could bring.
Well said. Well said. And I echo all of what Peter said. I mean, from a sales perspective, we get caught up in wanting to get the sale. We want to go in. We know we have a certain amount of time to present our wares and get back, what we can get back. But if you want a good, solid, very well-known trick, go into your customer and just ask them about them. Don't talk about your stuff at all. Just start asking them about them and their business. And you will be amazed at what you've learned. One of the biggest pieces of business we developed was by me not every day because that's stalker, but every time I call on a customer, I would talk about the railroad. Hey, we got the railroad, we got it. And they had a great business, rolled paper business, hadn't done railroad in 40 years. And so over time I got to know him, and I just started letting him talk about him and talk about how he came into the company. And what developed over a couple meetings is that these guys were growing at such an alarming rate that they didn't have time to think about switching to rail service because it involved a switch of inventory and stuff like that. But, and it took some patience, and it took some letting him tell me about the company and where they started. And so we eventually got that business, but it was, and it's been a great piece of business for us. But, listening and learning about the other businesses, today in today's transportation business specifically, you were talking about transport winds. There used to be you'd move it by rail, or you'd move it by truck, or you'd move it by boat, or you'd move it by plane. Now we move it by boat. We put it on a rail car. And then it's in an intermodal container. We take it to a point, and it gets put on a truck and taken it. They all work together now. But if you don't know about like the wind turbine, how's it getting from? I know how it gets from A to C, but how does it get from A to B in order to get to C? And so it's an amazing thing to learn about. And where are the parts that make the wind turbine? Who's bringing them? It's all about a back and forth conversation and listening, and that's all I got.
It all goes to communication, right?
It's all about communication.
Absolutely, and that's business and personal. Business and personal. On the personal side, communicating right effectively. We had a blab about that, and it was pretty good. And Peter, you being an expert in it, you've taught us about the different channels, understanding the different channels of communication. And what's funny is that's with our customers, our friends, and our family. Right, all of them have different channels of communication, and understanding that and appreciating it comes from that recharging point, right? Because when we're not recharging, we're redlining, and we get frustrated. Like I'm talking to myself right now with our kids because they didn't pick up the phone when I called them. I could have texted them and they would have responded, right? But I'm their dad, but recharging, you understand that stuff, and you just got to speak with people on their level and ask them, Jason, what you just talked about is asking. You did all the right things about asking about the customer and learning about the customer. What if we applied that with our relationships with our friends and our peers and our kids, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of that comes, you learn that because of recharge. I remember a few years ago, man, you were stressed out to the max because you were working 100 hours a week, right? You had no recharge. And,
and I had black hair.
That's right. You had an afro, actually.
I have some gray that's starting, so I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Me too, just a little bit.
So anything you guys want to end up with? Because I'm going to finish this with a new little thing here. Anything you guys want to say?
Just thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here. And when it comes to recharging your batteries, I'm going to take something that Jason suggested, which is how about just asking your customers or your family members, how do you recharge? And creates a great conversation. So thanks for the opportunity, John.
Great one. Yeah, don't leave quite yet, guys. I want anybody in the live chat, if you've got a question, just zip it out there for our folks. Make sure you follow Jason Pippin at Jakey PP, and also Peter Muir at Peter Muir, and you can always follow me at J Cassidy Rocks. And we do these Naked Truth blabs every Monday, every Friday, usually about 2:00. Sometimes we got to because of schedules we got to change today. We're going to have another one at 5:00 p.m. Eastern time about the ABCs of closing. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today with a couple of folks that are good, and I'm going to repost that really fast. And if you guys want to, you can just study that and be a part of it. So I'm going to end this right now with "Let's Get Naked." Right. So the way we talk about this is right. Some of the takeaways that I saw was change. Right. That was one of the biggest ones. We talked about growth comes from it. But guess what I took from it? Death happens without it, right? It might be death of your business. That might be death of a relationship. That might be whatever. But without change, you're going to have death of some sort. You got to have fun, right? Number one rule, and Jakey PP told us, is have fun. Peter Muir talked about mastermind with other successful folks, and I'm adding also maybe folks that aren't so successful. Maybe you can become a mentor to those people. Work harder, not smarter. And I think all of us agreed with the outdoors.
Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah. Did I say work?
You got a bunch of people out there now working dumb, but working really hard from what you just said, John.
Don't work harder, work smarter.
Correct.
That's what I meant. And the coolest thing about Blab is that it's naked. It's unscripted, and you don't have to be smart to host one. So
you can get a heckler to come on here like me and just rip you up the whole time.
Yeah, where's the microphone? I can cut you off now. And then the biggest part is that I think all of us can recharge when we do something outdoors. It might be even in our backyard with our kids, or going to a park, or even a simple walk. Peter, I think you, ever since I've known you, you've always talked about and explained that you had that property, that you were going to build that house. I mean, going across America on your motorcycle, it just goes to show you watch most successful people. They have that kind of recharge life, and they do something outdoors. I'm a big fan of it. I love offshore fishing. We need to do more of that stuff, and take somebody that's never done it, get them to go on vacation with you, or take their family on vacation. But guys, I appreciate y'all's time. I know it's valuable. I'm very appreciative of it, and I look forward to seeing you guys again on one of our Naked Truth Blabs.
Thank you, John. Enjoyed it. Peter, good to talk to you.
Jason, it's a pleasure. Yeah, and take care, John.
Hey, we're going to have this. It was recorded, so we'll have a copy for both you guys, and anyone else that you want to share this with, any of our viewers, you can go ahead and post. I'll have a post for it, and you can come back and see it again. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
All right, buddy.